What's up? Red Feather Free. Today, we're going to talk about The Gnostics by C.W. King. These are notes that I took back in May when I was actually studying this book, and I pulled off my shelf and I was like, yeah, knowledge doesn't need to be hoarded. Go ahead and share these pretty valuable insights you gleaned. So, we're going to go through my little study book here and see what we can pull out. I haven't read through this all, so bear with me if it's a little bit sketchy at times, but I'm sure there's some gold nuggets in here we'll be able to mine. First of all, it reads, "The secular combining with the ecclesiastical powers, having made it their duty to crush and eradicate all such daring and irregular growths of the human mind, such as the Gnosis." C.W. King, The Gnostics, page 7. This thought dovetails with the thesis I have of church and state being nothing more than a two-headed Janus of the same beast. It's designed to enslave people with morals and dogma. According to King, Gnosticism uses symbols and terminology to communicate its doctrines to the initiates. He says these sigil have, quote, "a voice to the wise, but which the vulgar heareth not." Everything around you is a symbol, and if you know not how to interpret it, you're ignorant, and therefore you're being controlled by the person that does know. From very early times, Gnosticism has united its own speculations with those of the magicians, national science, here referencing astrology. So, Gnosticism has always been closely linked with the study of astronomy and astrology. To study the doctrine of the Gnostics, read, quote, "Matter." He has treated this thoroughly. The last and greatest manifestation of the Gnosis came with the religion of Manes, which King states is, quote, "associated with the downfall of the Templars." He says, "Proving this is the most difficult problem in history." Proving the connection to Gnosis and the downfall of the Templars. It's been talked about so much throughout history, why they just disappeared, why they needed to be done away with. Did they disappear? Did they completely go away? Did they just go underground? Are we still here? What were they? Well, I believe they were the brothers of the Gnosis. They were Pythagoreans, if you will, Gnostics, Hermetics. The name really does not matter. Let's not associate a name with the idea. It's the idea that we're going after here. So that's the fundamental crux that we're after. The idea, not the symbol. We're not trying to idolize a symbol or a name. We want the idea, the spirit. So on page 10 of the preface, King tells us that the Freemasons are the successors of the Knights Templar, and that the origin of much of their symbolism is, quote, Gnostic. It says, "Learn to know all, but remain unknown." It tells us Adam Kadmon is the microcosm, meaning man. Adam Kadmon is the archetype of man as a race, and we are the microcosm, meaning everything contained within the whole of the cosmos, everything is contained within you and I. We are all individual stars. We are all stardust. We are all little stars in our own right. We're all creators, individual universes in and of ourselves. Infinite. We are irrational numbers. Adam has manifested in 10 emanations, which are not actual beings, but sources of life, vessels of the almighty power. They were the crown, wisdom, prudence, magnificence, severity, beauty, victory, glory, foundation, and empire. And these correspond to the figure of man, sire and pen, which consists of 243 numbers, the numerical value of the letters in the name Abraham, signifying the different orders in the celestial hierarchy. Now, the 10 names, crown, wisdom, prudence, magnificence, severity, beauty, victory, glory, foundation, and empire actually correspond to the 10 nodes of the Sephiroth of the Tree of Life. So the 10 Sephiroth served as types for the creation. From them emanated 4 worlds: Azaluth, Bria, Jezera, and Azia, each preceding out of the one above it, but each, however, one enveloping its superior. Now, this is key. Four worlds, each emanating out of the previous. This is the way quantum mechanics works. There are 4 quantum levels, 4 basic levels of energy that we exist on. Some people say there might be 5. The 5th element is spirit, but I see that's not a constructed element in our realm. Therefore, it should not be taken into the equation like that. It should be figured, but not in that sense. Think on it. Note, John's message to the churches of Asia is about the 7 chakras. I took a note there. The human soul is composed of 4 parts. See, there's the number 4 again. Borrowed from each of the 4 worlds. From Asia, it gets its nepesh, or seat of the physical appetites. So, the root. Nechek is the root chakra. This is what this corresponds to, or the earth, the element of earth. Jezera, the Raush, the seat of the passions. So, the heart. So we move up from the root, the seat of the material, to the seat of the passions. So we go from the root chakra to the heart chakra. We go from the discs to the cups. From Bria, Neshaman, or reason. So here it's the logos, word, reason, the sword. Okay, so the swords is reason, the word, the spirit. And now from Azaluth, the crown chakra, it obtains Chaya, the principle of spiritual life. So there are the 4 basic correspondences to Gnosticism and the Kabbalah, the tarot, and alchemy, and the chakras. We have 4 basic chakras. This is what people need to understand. This is the uniting of, the synthesizing of the teachings. This is the true Gnosis coming to you right now from Red Feather. Later on we read, Jehuel is the prince of fire, Michael is the prince of water. Both of them are attended by a host of 7 angels each. The egg and the serpent mystery is explaining the process or birth of creation. The egg symbolizes an ovum, and the snake is the spermatozoa. And that is a fractal too, so it can be, that symbol more or less encompasses the entire universe of symbols. It is the symbol of symbols. I said the symbol of the Ouroboros shows this in another fashion, snake eating its own tail. From the Mithraic tradition, Gnosticism passed into the Magi tradition, where it was, quote, modified by the theories of Basilides with a good dose of old Egyptian theology. This is on page 16 of the Gnostics by C.W. King. We're told it then passes into the Serapis worship, and Serapis was a combination god of different aspects of more or less the same archetypal image from different aspects of Egyptian, Syrian, Greek, Roman religions combined, or Chaldean combined into one as the Serapis. We're told is a case in which the Brahmanical religion, almost unaltered, is most evidently to be traced, thus emphasizing the Eastern parentage of the West's religions. And this also has backing in linguistics. Sanskrit is the parent language of all the modern Indo-European Romance languages. So it only goes to reason that with language would have came other aspects of culture like religion. The foci of Gnosticism was Alexandria and Ephesus. See Epiphanius' Life of Manes. He's referred to by King as a, quote, heresiarch. So it's a unique word, as like an arch heretic is the way I should say it. Epiphanius was, quote, also read by Christian and Zoroastrian orthodoxy. So he was an influence in the church. Manes in Babylonian is a name meaning, quote, the vessel. So we are all man. What is man but a vessel of the spirit? Haven't I said that that's the teaching? That we should not idolatrize the vessel. That the important function of a vessel is to be a carrier of the spirit. And our vessel is contained within the crown and the root. This is our vessel. So the spiritual and the material is the vessel that our spirit, our passion, and our logos, our reason, coexist in. So yes, we have a dual but a one-fold spirit that has a dual manifestation, passion and reason. And the passion, you can consider the darkness, the subconscious, that the reason is birthed out of. It's the virgin birth, it's the mystery. His real name was Kuberkus, and he was once a slave to a man named Terebinthius, whose surname was Buddha. I told this on page 17. This is also connected to the Palmyra school in Palestine and a man named Scythius, a wealthy Saracen. I'm told the mysteries, the Summa, the Gospel, the treasures were all books written by Scythius, who took Pythagoras as his guide into India. So there's the connection to Pythagoras and Gnosticism, and Manes and the Templars, and Freemasonry. Terebinthius was Scythius' slave when the latter perished during an experiment, or as C.W. King says, showing off a miracle. He absconded with his late master's fortunes to Persia and assumed the title of, quote, Buddha or sage. Buddha is Sanskrit and is the planet Mercury, also known as Greek Hermes or Egyptian Thoth. See C.W. King, page 18. Buddha's belongings were kept after his death via a similar manner as his master's. They were in turn left to his host servant, Kuberkus, aka Manes. Note, Scythius was the forerunner to Muhammad. Again, a supreme, I say that because Muhammad was a supreme Gnostic and an eclectic who went around, unified the knowledge that had been taken and disparate and divided up, divide, conquer, you know, by the people of special interest to try and give it back to people in as complete a form as he could have possibly put it together. And as given to him by inspiration from the plant gods, I believe. I totally understand Prophet Muhammad to have been a mushroom shaman. When he went into the cave and went into his cold sweats and his visions, that was an Amanita muscaria induced entheogenic vision quest. He was a shaman. He practiced in the ancient line of the shamans, because who came in the 13th century into the Arab lands and conquered them other than the Mongols? And the Mongols carried the tradition of shamanism back to its ancient roots and its core. In fact, Genghis Khan himself was a very powerful shaman. It's a whole nother story, though. Terebinthius, He formed the basis of his teachings off of his understanding of the three systems, i.e. the Egyptian, the Indian, and the Greek, not to mention his Persian culture itself. So we have a four, again the number four, a full four culture synthesis that went into Gnosticism. The Persian or the Chaldean, also known as the Babylonian, the Sumerian culture, the Egyptian, the Indian, and the Greek. These are the main lines that Gnosticism has been drawn from. Terebinthius was killed by the Babylonian Magi for being, quote, overwise. His servant Kubricus apparently became a Magi himself. The main object of his, quote, scheme, Manes', was the reconciliation of the two religions that then possessed the two great empires, Christianity and Zoroastrianism, which I believe is what Friedrich Nietzsche was doing in Thus Spake Zarathustra to the wise man. To the, how does King say it again? He says, a voice to the wise. I believe that's what Nietzsche is. He's a voice to the eyes, and the vulgar heareth him not. So it goes on to tell us, Manes called himself the Paraclete, and later in medieval alchemy we have Paracelsus, who was one of the greatest alchemists that's ever lived, and advanced the knowledge and understanding and science of minerals and medicine probably 100 years, 200 years ahead of where it was when he arrived. He accepted the Gospels, Manes this is, accepted the Gospels and, however, cleansed of Judaic influence, and he wholly rejected the Old Testament as a complete and total unreliable source, because it is obviously so edited and so massaged and so out of place and so illogical that it cannot be taken as a foundation to build your house upon. It simply cannot. Manes' rise to prominence and the spreading of his doctrines met with an abrupt end. The Persian king Varances I, about the year 275, summoned a council condemning Manes as a heretic and sentencing him to be flayed alive. We're told that on page 20. So, all the prophets throughout history meet with a similar end. It seems, anyways. Bob Marley asked the question, why do we always kill our prophets and stand by and ask why we're left in this wretched condition? And then, ironically, that prophet himself was killed, was he not? Yeah. You can say he died of cancer. Where'd cancer come from? The Magi sought to get rid of him, to maintain their monopoly on knowledge, and thus also power. Kings are still the same, only secular Magi's suppress. That was a personal note I wrote. One of Manes' most peculiar doctrines was how the sun imparts purified souls who have died into the moon via a machine with 12 revolving spheres, which by its motion attracts the souls of the dying into it. Manes believed that when the sun came into the world, to Jove, mankind, or when the sun came into the world to save mankind, he continued. This machine, or he contrived this machine, containing 12 bowls, which being made to revolve by the motion of the spheres. And I'm sorry, but it's cursive handwriting and it's old and some of it was smudged, so I had to take a second to get that out. Manes was a genuine pantheist, teaching that God lived in all things, even plants. He even had a doctrine of emanations. So obviously, if you're a pantheist and believe that God lives in plants, it's not too great of an imaginational leap for you to say that taking the Amanita muscaria mushroom, the soma, the little teacher, the philosopher's stone, or also the Psilocybin cubensis, which is a different teacher. They teach you different lessons, but they're both instructors, into your temple to learn a lesson. But let me pose this to you. Once you've gone into the temple and you've learned a lesson, do you continually need to go back into the temple and learn the lesson? Or do you know it, and do you need to take it into yourself and reflect upon it and build upon it and allow it to grow inside you? That's the reason in the ancient times the mysteries were really only taken one time, except for by the priests who did the initiation rites. I'm kind of a firm believer that the average typical person only needs to take the entheogenic ride, really, the real ride, one time in their life. Maybe each one of the mysteries, to learn what each one does, because no two are alike. But why keep going back into the temple? Take the knowledge you've gained, build upon it. Unless you really want to pursue that and you feel like there's something more that you could gain from it. But generally, the knowledge that you are one with all and all with one is enough to satisfy your curiosity, let's just say. The Buddhistic system, compared to the Gnostic ideas of Manes, the Paraclete, is the doctrine of successive emanations, the means of escaping from the trammels of matter and the struggles of the soul for ultimate absorption into its original source, page 21, are all very much compatible. The grand aim of Buddhism, according to C.W. King, is to effect the release of the soul from its connection with matter. All things exist only in illusion. Therefore, the only way they can return into non-existence or repose is through Gnosis, or true knowledge. According to King, the Buddhistic system says that illusion is defined as the belief in an eternal world, meaning material world. The spirit's the only thing eternal, and it's not of this world. Hence, the soul's release from flesh or matter is through the relinquishing of the notion of the reality of the external or objective objects. The purest form of the ancient Indian original Buddhism is to be found in Nepal. I wrote, the doctrines of the Pandapani, which was the cosmogony of their cosmogony, is of particular interest. And then I note, you learn to live like a jungle in the you learn to live like an animal in the jungle where you stay, Guns N' Roses. So don't fall for the illusion, or you'll be an animal in the jungle. The cosmogony of the Nepalese, the Buddhist Padapani, or Padnapani, was one of the original 5 emanations. It created Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, or the principles of creation, preservation, and destruction. I'm told that on page 22. Adi Buddha first created 13 mansions for his own eternal abode, but also for the dwelling place after the death of a follower of Buddha. The next lowest or highest are the 18 mansions created by Brahma. Lower down are the 6 made by Vishnu, and still lower are the lowest are the 3 works of Shiva. So here, let's correspond this to the tarot and the 4 crown chakra, throat chakra, heart chakra, root chakra, wands, swords, cups, discs. So beginning from the top, we have Adi Buddha, crown chakra. This is the connection with the Almighty, with the Spirit outside, through us. Then Then we have Brahma, which is reason, the word, Brahma. Next we have Vishnu, which is the heart. Lowest down we have Shiva, or Siva, which is the root, or the material, the discs. Now note, compare the cosmogony of Hermes, see the collected works of Hermes. Notes from the biblical world. A dictionary of biblical archaeology. So I'm getting into a different book here now, and then I'll get back into Gnosticism before the notebook ends. But so we talk about Pythagoras, who lived from 530 to 400 BC. He held that, quote, the sun is the center of the planetary systems, and that the earth rotates on its axis. We're told that in the biblical world, page 109. So Pythagoras gave us the current working model of the solar system 2,500 years ago. And he based this upon alchemy. If you read the Turba Philosophorum, which is a book that was written to dialogue of Pythagoras and his students are explaining the Pythagorean doctrines one at a time, it is teaching you alchemy. It teaches you how they came to this understanding. And modern science and their universities will not teach you this. They will not say that they were wrong for thousands of years, only to come back around again. They cannot eat the humble pie. They refuse to. We're told the zodiac was fully developed during the Hellenistic period. So already the knowledge of the heavens and obviously the precession of the equinoxes and the 26,000 years that takes was calculated and known in the Hellenistic period. The Babylonian Magi and the Egyptian priests had advanced knowledge of the stars some 5,000-6,000 years ago. Dogon priests in Africa have knowledge of the stars that they could not possibly have had without really some sort of, according to Robert Temple, extraterrestrial aid, or we would call that angelic aid. What is an angel except for something out of this world that comes to give us messages, right? How come we think that extraterrestrials have to always visit us in the form of little green men? What kind of a joke is that? If we were intelligent enough to create things that allowed us to travel throughout the galaxy, do you not think that we could transmit our thoughts as well? Think on that. Next we're told Abraham, or Brahman, so Abram, Brahman, see, Abram and Abraham. Abram became Abraham when they added the H to his name, and this is significant because Sarah became Sarah at the same time also. The H indicated an input of the feminine letter, the He, into Abram's name, and thus creating a new doctrine and a new covenant for man, between man and God, based off of the name. Different story. Abram, or Brahman, come from the east. According to the Dictionary of Biblical Archaeology, his most likely place of origin was ancient Babylonian city of Ur, which worship a pan-like god who ate plants circa 2500 BC, so some 5,000 years ago. Abraham, an entheogenic plant doctor, a shaman, if you will, from the city of Ur, is the founder of modern Christianity. Islam is also connected to the Brahmin religions, the Buddhist religions, the Gnostic teachings, the Chaldean faiths, Zoroastrianism, the ancient Egyptian tradition. It's all connected through this seed. See the goat-eating leaves. This is a sculpture that you can find on the British Museum's website, I believe, pictures of it. They worshipped a goddess named Naana, the moon god. Abraham, the friend of God, is literally the name. Abraham, or Yes, Abraham means the friend of God. And with the H and the He being initialized into his name from Abram to Abraham, I believe represents the influence of the moon goddess, Naana, and that covenant. That he became her priest when the Brahmanic knowledge came from India into Chaldea. It was most likely influenced by the moon goddess cult of Naana, or Astarte, Ishtar, which actually, when you get into it, probably predates the Brahmanic. And the Brahmanic was an outgrowth of the Atlantean, which was a higher progression from the original moon or lunar worship. So it's, again, coming back around again. I said I was mapping out the method of calculating what or how to calculate a genuine start point for where to begin constructing a consciousness starting point. The Freemasons, Illuminati, and the Gnostics. And next we learn about Jewish sects. From the Biblical World, pages 324 to 332. Compare the Assassins with the Assadeans, or Hasidians, aka the pious ones. These pious ones arose in about the 4th century BC, although they really made their presence felt in the Maccabean revolt, page 324. They were staunch in their defense of Judaism against what they saw as a Hellenizing effect on Israel. They were even exposed to torture and death for their refusal to desecrate the Sabbath. A reference for the old and new ideas to merge and create a basis from which to serve as the foundation of the memory system. That was the note continued from last time, sorry. I haven't read these over yet. The books of the Maccabeans referred to the Assadeans as the, quote, mighty men of Israel. They were said to be devoted to the law, and that they were welcome, and that they welcome peace so long as it accords to complete freedom. Now, let me just clarify what we mean by a Hellenizing effect. That's what we would call westernized today. And these people would be called the radicals, the conservatives in modern times, is what we would be looking at. And this Hellenizing effect is seen as weakening and diluting the virtue of man. And the great philosophers of Greece themselves, say like Diogenes, the cynic, would have been considered one of these pious men, or one of these mighty men, because he rejected that Hellenizing influence totally. Now I know here that the Rothschild revisionists would like us to believe that, quote, these pious men were the forerunners to the Pharisees, but this is a lie. In reality, their legacy could be better linked to the Essenes. The name Essene has not yet found the roots of its origin. According to Josephus and Philo, it meant holiness, or like the 19th century scholars contend, it meant pious, page 328. There were many such Essenic orders, i.e. Gnostic sects, or men of the desert, or hermits, if you will. One such order is spoken of by Philo. It is known as the Therapeutae, which was an ancient sect of Jewish ascetics. They dwelled outside Alexandria on the shores of Lake Mariotes during the 1st century AD. These are the people who preserved things like the Gnostic texts and the Dead Sea Scrolls for us from the firebrand of the Catholic Church. I said, what makes them unique is their allowance of women into their order, and that they would engage in, quote, religious, or in readings in the Holy Scriptures, whose allegorical significance they proposed to investigate beneath the level of the literal. So there you go, interpreting the symbols. So that's what an allegory is. It tells a story with symbols to represent other things. We are told that the Therapeutae had the Old Testament, but they composed their own on the allegorical interpretation of the scripture. This makes them prime candidates for being the authors of the Gnostic Gospels, aka the Nag Hammadi text, page 330. They apparently practiced a version of the mysteries, and I said note, Druids at Stonehenge also practiced the same mysteries. We are told that every 50 days they would hold an all-night communal ceremony with singing of Thanksgiving hymns and choral dancing. This is remarkably similar to descriptions of the Eleusinian mysteries as well as the mysteries of the Temple of Isis. See page 330. This most likely dates back before Abraham, well into pre-Diluvian times. This is my note. And the singing of Thanksgiving hymns and choral music all through the night is really a description of like this orgiastic or non-orgiastic, if you will. It have to be an orgy, but that feeling of the orgasmic energy, the Kundalini energy being released freely through the voice, through the logos, through the embracing of the all. And the 50 days is obviously significant, and it's going to be based upon astronomical significance as well. 50 is a number that's rooted, it has to do with the orbits of the Sirius star system and how they relate. See Robert Temple's The Sirius Mystery. Now we hear about Gezer. Gezer, where the Samaritans wish to is where the Samaritans wish to construct their temple. It was called the city of our Lord Noah. That's what. So Mount Gezer today is in Israel, and the Samaritans are a tribe of Jews, of Israelites, who did not get taken to Babylon during the Babylonian captivity. So when the tribe of Judah came back, and they had the Torah that had been forged by Ezra rewritten, based saying that the Pharisees' law was what. These Samaritans maintained the Old Talmud and maintained that the Temple Mount was supposed to be originally, as it states, where Noah landed, on Mount Gezer. And they maintain that still to this day. And the presence of actual Samaritan Jews in Israel that actually still maintain this temple at Gezer, the last time I checked, was very, 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 very small, which is it's truly a sad loss for the history of culture if it's not maintained, because it has been through all of it. And I'm certain there are still priests that are maintaining the tradition as we have throughout history. However, the modern world as you see it, the labels as you see them today, are anything but. If you really want to get down to the truth, you need to start studying philosophy like Friedrich Nietzsche's Immoralism really deeply to learn how to take things, turn them upside down 180 degrees, and then see it for what it is. Because in our modern world, everything's divide and conquer. Every symbol is reversed. It's meant to control you and confuse you and keep you dumbed down. What they tell you is good is bad, and what they tell you is bad is good. Simplest way I can explain it. Archaeologists working at the site on an ancient timepiece they called the Babylonian Zodiac. So that's been found at Mount Gezer, the Babylonian Zodiac. Simon Maccabeus, the high priest, captured the city in 142 BC, then settled Jews there. We're told that on 257. Mount Gezer is one of the longest continually occupied sites on Earth. From the period of the first cavern to the Crusades, or from the period of the first cavemen to the Crusaders, the mound was continually occupied. Page 287. Jewish sects continue. The Pharisees and the Sadducees were Jewish sects. Their division originated very much along the same way as the split between the later Mohammedan sects of the Shia and the Sunni came into being. In reality, they are but two heads of the same coin. The Sadducees claim to be the, quote, sons of Zadok, who was the first high priest in David's temple. Therefore, they claimed the right as the leaders of the doctrines and helpers and keepers of the original teachings of Moses. The Pharisees, however, on the other hand, they placed the written law alongside oral tradition. They also held that they could make binding laws themselves that were not written in Scripture. The Pharisees considered that they were the followers of Ezra. In his tradition, they considered Ezra to be a, quote, founder of Judaism after Moses. They stressed that the oral law was equal to the Pentateuch and that both were the source of their religion. What that means is the priests said, what we say goes, no matter what's in this book. Fundamental split. There were followers of the creed. The Pharisees were followers of the creed that the dead would be resurrected on Judgment Day, in reward and retribution in the afterlife, the coming of the Messiah, the existence of angels, and also of divine foreknowledge, along with man's free choice of and therefore responsibility for his actions. Agreed. The main difference between the Sadducees and the Pharisees was in that they were subjects to different ultimate authorities, i.e., they were both still preachers of the death, as I like to call them, of slave morality, as Nietzsche calls it. The Sadducees were subject to an arbitrary, rigid code of dead letters, and the Pharisees were ruled by their, quote, tyrant of the most respected authority. Neither of these teach the truth spoken of by Christ Jesus, that we are not subjects, we are masters. The Pharisees freed the Jews from the temple to ensnare him in the synagogue. By 70 AD, the Pharisees were the sole voice remaining, which was teaching the doctrine of slavery of the Pharisees instead of slavery to the temple priest. Just to draw a contrast between the two, the Pharisees were the learned men who relied on this as their authority, and the Sadducees, on the other side, were an aristocracy where they were usually from the wealthier parts of society, i.e. merchants, high-ranking priests, and worldly aristocracy. See page 327. The Pharisees may be more closely related to the teachings of the beliefs may be more closely related to the teachings of the Essenes than the Sadducees were, but they were not even worthy of being placed in the same family. The Pharisees are like modern evangelical Christians in many respects. They believe in the exoteric, profane understanding of the sacred texts. They know the true allegorical and alchemical knowledge they contain when understood, like the Essenes and the Therapeutae, yet they do not profess this. At the conclusion of their, quote, mystery ceremony was nearly finished, and they had sang and danced all night long. They stood with hands raised to the firmament, and while facing the east, would pray to the rising sun, asking for knowledge and the light of truth. This was the conclusion of the Essenes and the Therapeutae's all night long ritual. This is the initiation into the pyramid mysteries, if you will, and it's also what was practiced in yoga for time eternal. We wake up and we pray to the sun for wisdom, the Gayatri mantra. Told their sect was particularly known for devotion to the quest for wisdom and the love for contemplative devotion. They held a dualistic view of the body and the soul, and they were like the Essenes, secure in their affection for the word of the scriptures. Then I have a note here. See Helena Petrovna Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine, which underlies the literal word of the scriptures. They felt, quote, no impression on Jewish life, but they were influential on early Christian development. They emphasized individual salvation above all other laws. They rejected Jewish national law and life. So there you go. They were children of Israel, believers in the scripture, yet not Jews, rejectors of Jewish law and Jewish national life. Jesus was an Essene. And the Essenes and Therapeutae come from the Gnostic line, the synthesis, the synchronizing line, putting it all together, because the realization that it was all split up after the flood. You know, after the Tower of Babel fell, the knowledge that we used to have was all divided, and man had been babbling back and forth about what was the truth ever since. The polar opposite in nature of the peace-loving bunch of desert-dwelling hippies was the sect infamously known as the Zealots. They regarded themselves as the defenders of the law and the national life of the Jewish people. They are manifested in the modern Zionist state of Israel, which was founded on the Zealot principle that was their strong opposition to any foreign domination of Judea. Out of the Zealots arose the most extreme of all sects, the so-called Sicarii, or dagger carriers. They carried daggers under their cloaks so they would stab anyone they witnessed in the community committing a sacrilege. Hence the term cloak and dagger. Secret society. The Sicarii are the Illuminati that real people worry about. Not, see, the Illuminati that most people on YouTube talk about, and you know, your Mark Dices and all these other shill tools, they are not the real Illuminati. Not at all. The Sicarii, that's where it comes from. They're the real cloak and dagger ones that will kill you and assassinate you and take you out. And people are like, oh yeah, of course that's the Illuminati. But no, they're mixing it up. They're trying, when they teach you about it, they teach you about the Bavarian Illuminati with Adam Weishaupt and things like that. They're actually trying to teach you that the Gnostic knowledge, the knowledge to separate yourself from their national law and dogma, is wrong, is cloak and dagger. And it is in its own way. It's just cloak. It's not cloak and dagger, you see. That's the thing. It had to be cloaked because these fools with their daggers under the cloaks were running around stabbing people to death who they saw not following laws in the streets. This is exactly what's going on right now in the Middle East, in you know, the Islamic countries. It's no different. And if you think that the two aren't connected, I would say re-examine your interpretations of the world today. The Zionist movement and this ideology can be found clearly still manifested in almost all the world's religions in one form or another. You have a sect of zealots, if you will. However, this particular sect of zealots has managed to climb to the tip top of the world's financial structure because they're ruthless and they will kill anyone, anywhere, to get their way. And they've done that, and they've been able to intimidate people for a very long time. However, they've managed to keep their power because they've managed to maintain a monopoly, more or less, on knowledge and the flow of knowledge. They've managed to suppress it. That is until the printing press, Gutenberg. Within a couple centuries after the printing press arrived and people were able to start writing and publishing ubiquitously and spreading their opinions outside of the pulpit in the Catholic Church and these dogmatic structures, what did we start seeing all over the world? Revolutions. Now freedom of information is being given to us by the internet. And do you think it's going to take 2 centuries for a revolution to occur all over the world because of this knowledge getting out? No. The revolution will happen this century. We will have a new world system based on freedom and the understanding and the synchronization and the synthesis of all of this knowledge, properly understood and not dogmatically and moralistically controlled by a sect of dagger-wielding zealots. Because men like myself no longer have to fear. We all need to come out unite together, men and women alike, and start speaking the truth of these doctrines. We're told out of the Zealots arose the most okay, read that already. Now, continuing in the Gnostics by C.W. King. That the three series of abodes previously described, referring to the descending houses, receive the souls of their respective followers. Below these are the mansions of the planetary gods, Indra and Chandra. That Indra was the first archetypal Soma priest, if you will. He's always represented with a parasail over him, and that could be interpreted as the winged disc, which the winged disc is the feathered serpent. The feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, is a reference to the Amanita muscaria mushroom. Seed John Allegro's sacred mushroom in the cross. It is all related to astrotheology, solar worship, and Ra, radiation, and Ka, the spirit, and the Ba, the body, united, all three. The Ba is the soul, actually, the Ka, Ba, and Ra, Rakaba. The vibration of the spirit in the body. Below these waters are the seven padalos, or regions of hell. So below the heart chakra are the regions of hell. So below the waters are your subconscious. This is the classic archetypian psychology. Water represents an unknown, a mystery, an abyss. It's deep. It contains everything within it. It can assume or absorb all and manifest seemingly all out of it. So it represents our subconscious mind. It's filled with all sorts of possible crazy, scary demons that we can conjure up and imagine, but also all the other thoughts that we've ever thought get dropped in there as well. It's an infinitely deep well. The abode of evil spirits and the damned. This is not always the conception of hell or the underworld. And the Norse conception of hell, it's not necessarily that way at all. It's just the place where you go when your flesh perishes. It's a place of disillusion is what it is. The body dissolves, the illusion of matter is dissolved, disillusion occurs. Dis, the goddess, dis of darkness, illusion, Maya, disillusion, the darkness coming over Maya or matter. King says that the cosmogony is most strikingly similar to the construction of the Ophite diagram as described by Origen and figured by Matter in his History of Christ, the Gnostics. It is at this juncture where the two previous lines of inquiry merge and begin to form a more comprehensive view of Gnosticism as brought to the West from its origins in India. King says that the Essenes were Buddhist monks in every particular, and that they had been occupying the area on the shores of the Dead Sea for thousands of ages before Pliny's time. For a detailed account of the religion and their mode of ascetic life, see Josephus's Ante-Judea 15:10. When providing us with the origins of the Essenes, King gives us a similar yet different source. It is still said to mean the same thing, quote, purity. Although it is said to stem from the Arabic word Hassam instead of the earlier suggestion in the section on Jewish sex, which said it is from a, quote, unknown origin, The Arabic word Hassam means pure. So, assassin, Assam, assassin, pure. The term Essene was also the title of the annually elected priest of the Ephesian Diana. And Diana plays in the mysteries. While in office, these priests were supposed to observe perfect chastity. Pausanias describes the Ephesian institution as a priest of Diana Hymnia near Orchomenos. These priests, we are told, are besides having to be chaste all their life, also must keep himself pure in all things else, unquote, page 23. For the Essenes, like the Buddhists, this remaining pure included the abstinence from eating flesh. So, veganism and vegetarianism is really a root, a core, a thing that modern world is full with. These dark brothers, we'll call them, the non-freedom people, they enslave people by causing them to eat other animals. And if they can subjugate an animal, another living creature, to a place so below them that they can consume it, even though there's plenty of other options for them to have, what's to stop them from placing a human in that animal's place psychologically and subjecting them just the same? No respect for life is no respect for life, period. King says that the Buddhist priest is bound by vows of celibacy, abstinence from meat, and that they must abstain from obtain sustenance through alms. It's on page 23. The Essene priests were also forbidden to enter the baths, an oath which apparently abhorred the Hellenes. When telling us about the influence of the Jewish Essenes, page 24, King says that as far as their customs were concerned, primitive Christianity was something that, quote, cannot be disputed. Their influence on primitive Christianity is something that cannot be disputed. He says that though their influence was felt strongly in early Christianity, that its effects were even more influential among the Gnostics of Syria, see page 24, whom he then compares to the Hindu fakirs, who are known for their radical asceticism. Their basic tenet was that outward filth represented inward purity. We are told the story of Simon Stylites, a Gnostic Syrian who sat atop the summit of a pillar, sleepless for 21 days and nights by ringing a bell. See page 24. We're told by King that such ideas of penance, quote, constituted the very essence of the Christian of the Lower Empire. That concludes my notes on the history of the Gnostics from C.W. King, as well as the connections made from biblical archaeology. Please share this video. I thank you all for tuning in and just being patient. If you watch this far, you're awesome. I love you so much. Just keep on keeping on. And please, leave a comment in the section below. I want to know what you think about this knowledge. There's so much here. Anything, what jumps out at you. Ask me questions. Anything you want to know, you want to learn about. Give me your questions, your responses, your thoughts. Let's co-create. Peace.